Part. My wife's father called me worthless trash in front of the entire family. She deserves better, he declared. I nodded politely and said, "You're right, sir," and left his house alone. The next day, at 10 a.m., he got 3 text messages, one from his lawyer, "The deal is over," one from his daughter, "I hate you," and one from me, "Don't mess with trash." After I hung up, I sat in my office until nearly midnight, thinking about everything Patricia had told me. Robert hadn't just insulted me at family dinners. He destroyed Elena's career because she'd had the courage to tell him the truth about his bad decisions. The $15 million investment I'd been preparing wasn't just going to save his company. It was going to reward him for years of arrogance and poor judgment. It was going to validate his belief that he was always right, even when he was catastrophically wrong. More importantly, it would mean that Elena would never have to choose between her father and her husband. She could keep both relationships intact, never confronting the fact that she'd stayed silent while he tore me down. But now she was going to have to choose. And based on everything I'd learned about Robert Kellerman, I had a feeling I knew which choice she'd make. The next morning, I arrived at my office early and made one final review of the withdrawal documents. Everything was in order. James would deliver the formal termination notice to Nexora Labs at 10 a.m. At the same time, my scheduled text messages would be sent to Elena and Robert. At 9:45 a.m., I called Elena. "Samuel, is everything okay? I need to tell you something important, but I want you to sit down first." "You're scaring me, Elena. I'm the anonymous investor who pulled out of Nexora Labs." Silence. Complete silence for nearly 30 seconds. "What?" "My company, Amberlin Ventures, was prepared to invest $15 million in your father's biotech firm. I withdrew the offer yesterday morning." "That's impossible, you work in portfolio management. You don't have $15 million. "Alana, I own Amberlin Ventures. We manage over $200 million in assets. I've been the anonymous investor your father's been courting for 8 months." I could hear her breathing fast and shallow. "This is some kind of joke. Check your phone. You're going to receive a text message in exactly 12 minutes. So is your father. The message will be from me confirming everything I just told you." "Samuel, this doesn't make sense. If you have that kind of money, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't need you to know. And because I wanted to see how your family would treat someone they thought was beneath them. So this is what, some kind of test?" "No, it was going to be an investment right up until your father called me worthless trash in front of your entire family, and you said none." Elena started crying. "I should have defended you. I know that, but Samuel, this is my father's life, his company. You can't destroy it because your feelings got hurt. This isn't about my feelings, Elena. It's about respect and consequences. Please don't do this, we can fix things. I'll talk to him, I'll make him apologize." "It's too late for apologies." At exactly 10 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text confirmation that both messages had been delivered. Elena's phone buzzed at the same time. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Samuel, please. I'm begging you, don't destroy my father." "I'm not destroying him, Elena. I'm letting him face the consequences of his own choices. This is cruel." "What's cruel is watching your husband get torn down for 3 years, and never saying a word to stop it." Elena hung up. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Robert, and he was screaming before I even said hello. "You son of a, you think this is funny? You think you can destroy my company because I hurt your feelings? Mr. Kellerman, I think you've misunderstood the situation." "I've misunderstood nothing, Elena told me everything. You're the investor, you're the one who pulled out." "That's correct. 23 people work for me, Samuel. 23 families depend on this company. You're willing to destroy all of them because I said some things you didn't like. Actually, Mr. Kellerman, I'm willing to let your company succeed or fail based on its own merits without my money propping it up. We had a deal. We had a preliminary agreement that I chose not to sign. No laws were broken, no contracts were violated." Robert was quiet for a moment. And when he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. "What do you want?" "Nothing, Mr. Kellerman, I don't want anything from you. There has to be something, money, an apology, what? I want you to understand what it feels like to need someone you consider worthless." I hung up and turned off my phone. It was over. 3 days later, Elena filed for divorce. She came to the house while I was at work and packed her things, leaving only a letter on the kitchen counter. The letter was 2 pages long, but it boiled down to one simple message. She couldn't be married to someone who would deliberately hurt her family. What she didn't mention was that she'd also cut off all contact with her father. I found out from Patricia Webb, who'd heard it from another former Nexura Labs employee. Elena had confronted Robert about how he treated me, and when he tried to justify his behavior, she told him exactly what she thought about his business decisions, his treatment of his research staff, and his years of verbal abuse. According to Patricia, the conversation had ended with Elena telling her father that he'd destroyed her marriage and her career, and that she never wanted to see him again. Robert had called her 17 times since then. She hadn't answered once. Within a week, news of Nexora Labs' financial troubles had spread through the biotech community. Two more potential investors pulled out, spooked by the company's debt ratio and the sudden departure of their lead funding source. Robert was forced to lay off 8 employees and close his secondary research facility. The local business journal ran a story about the company's struggles, focusing on the mysterious withdrawal of their primary investor. Robert refused to comment, but the article quoted several former employees who painted a picture of a company struggling with leadership issues and poor strategic decisions. By the end of the month, Robert had put his house on the market and was liquidating his personal investments to keep the company afloat. The country club membership was gone. The vacation home in Vail was gone. Everything was being sold to buy time. I drove past his house one afternoon and saw him in the front yard pulling weeds from a garden that his landscaping service used to maintain. He looked older, smaller somehow, like a man who'd finally run out of other people to blame. 6 months later, I received word that Nexora Labs had declared bankruptcy. Robert had managed to find a buyer for some of their research assets, but the company itself was finished. The remaining employees were either laid off or absorbed by the acquiring firm. Robert himself had taken a job as a consultant for a larger biotech company, working out of a small office in a strip mall near the airport. The man who'd spent years lecturing me about success and achievement was now commuting to the kind of anonymous office space he'd once mocked. Eleonina never reached out to me directly, but I heard through mutual friends that she'd taken a position with a research institute in California. She was doing well, publishing papers and speaking at conferences again. She'd found her voice in science, even if she'd never found it in our marriage. I sold the house in Denver and moved to Portland, where I opened a new office for Amberlin Ventures. The change of scenery was good for me, and the Pacific Northwest had a thriving tech community that offered plenty of investment opportunities. I never heard from Robert again, but I didn't need to. The business journals kept me updated on his decline. Every failed venture, every missed opportunity, every time someone chose not to invest in his projects because of his reputation for poor decision-making. Robert Kellerman had learned what it meant to be dismissed, ignored, and considered worthless by people who held his future in their hands. He discovered that respect wasn't something you could demand or inherit. It was something you earned through how you treated others, especially when you thought they couldn't fight back. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone face the natural consequences of their own character. And sometimes the most worthless person in the room turns out to be the one with all the power.